What's up, geeks and gamers? It's Odin coming back with a box office breakdown for this past weekend, which once again saw Avatar: The Way of Water dominate the box office and now has passed $2 billion worldwide as Puss in Boots 2, The Last Wish is also now nearing $300 million worldwide. Both of these films have shown themselves to be very, very strong as far as their legs are concerned, more than doubling what they have done in the first 2 weeks of their release. And so both of these films, as I've been mentioning, I think I mentioned for the first time last weekend that those are both chart breakers, where these films far exceeded the expectations after their first 2 weeks, which isn't all that much of a surprise, seeing again of the holiday frame, the holiday season being a time when a lot of times films are again do better in the long run, with more people being off of work, and also with both of these weekends, or at the very least with Avatar's weekend lining up with Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, it does indeed make a lot of sense as to why a lot of that money came a little bit later. And so we'll go ahead and dive into this box office news, as once again Deadline continues, and I know some people are triggered by this word, but it continues to ignore inflation, and that is something that definitely needs to be taken into account when talking about the highest grossing films of all time. And that's not just with Avatar, that's with Avengers Endgame, that is with Avengers Infinity War, that's with any of the modern day big budget films, because when it comes down to it, yes, it's impressive for these films to be making $2 billion, $3 billion, but when you take into account the fact that in today's dollars, other films from years past would have made vastly more, vast amounts of more money, not to mention just the number of tickets that were sold for those films versus what it is today. I mean, I don't think anyone would, beat around the bush when they say that, less people are going to see movies today than they were, 20, 30, 40 years ago. And this is just a trend that we have continued to see. And even though, obviously, Avatar: Way of Water is bringing a ton of money to the box office, and that's ultimately a good thing because it's bringing a lot of money to theaters, it doesn't really seem to be helping it all that much, because if you look at the stock prices, for instance, of places like AMC and other places, you would think that a film like this, going as strong as it is, like doing as well as it is, that would, again, kind of maybe reflect upon people's looking at the value of, places like AMC and others. But whereas AMC has really seen its stock really plummet and really just not do all that well, you've seen other places like Cinemark be relatively steady. So there really hasn't been a bump as far as the theaters are concerned, other than what we know or what we guess based on historical standards of the amount of money that they likely get from big films like this and other films like it as well. So this film, though, has indeed crossed $2 billion, and I still think that right now, my prediction for the worldwide total box office by the end of its run was somewhere between $2 and $2.5 billion. I'm still going to hang on to that number because obviously this film has no competition, but it is seeing that law of diminishing returns. It is getting less and less as the days go by. Still making a lot of money, though, and so definitely do not sleep on this film, possibly going past 2.5, but based on the fact that it has been out for as long as it is, most people who have already wanted to see it have seen it, and that number becomes a lot less as the days go on. And then, of course, you finally will have some competition coming at the box office within the next few weeks. That's the reason why I think that ultimately, yes, the film will still be one of the highest grossing films. However, once again, inflation must be taken into account, and that's something that again must be taken into account for all films. Avatar: Way of Water, though, as you look at the domestic numbers here, $19.6 million, a 40% hold. So 6 weeks out, this film continuing to have just historic level holds, even though it dropped 255 screens. So again, even 20th Century Studios, even though Disney is clearly starting to recognize, okay, we're going to start to pull back on some of the theaters here, because its per theater ratio is still very, very strong, is still very good, but just like any film, after 6 weeks, right, it's going to ultimately slow down, and so they're going to start to pull those things away. So Avatar: Way of Water, though, continuing, though, to have this type of strong box office is very impressive. Right now, it's just shy of $600 million, and that's why I think that ultimately this film will probably end somewhere between $650 and $700 million in the domestic market. Very well has the potential to do more than that. That's just where it seems to be trending, at least at this point in time. So I ultimately do think that this movie will not be able to pass up the domestic for Top Gun Maverick, which was $718 million. And one of the reasons as to why is if you actually compare the domestic numbers for both Avatar and for Top Gun Maverick at the same time of its release, since Top Gun Maverick had the benefit of the summer being able to have, people off from school, right? People were still working over the summer, though, so it's not as big of a difference as people might think it to be. Again, if you're someone who's off from school and off from work as a teacher, then obviously it impacts you, but there's still a lot of people that still work year-round. You look at these numbers, though, and you compare them to each other, and you actually recognize not only are you starting to see Top Gun Maverick outpace it on the dailies, which was to be expected just based on times of year, but also because you are now seeing the actual weekend numbers domestically specifically starting to actually edge out by an extra $5 to $10 million or so towards Top Gun Maverick. And so that's why I do think that, again, again, right now, obviously, this film at the same point of its release is definitely far ahead of Top Gun Maverick. But now that we're starting to see that equalize, that's why I think by the end of it, $650 to $700 million domestic for Avatar, which is still very, very impressive numbers there with inflation or not. But again, it's going to be interesting to see that battle play out because honestly, at this point, who knows what could happen with it? It just seems that based on the trends that likely will be the domestic champ of 2022 will likely be Top Gun Maverick, whereas the clear international champ of 2022 will be Avatar: The Way of Water, pacing well towards $2.5 billion. Puss in Boots is also a film that's been doing very well since its release, gotten very positive word of mouth, which is why I think this film has had such staying power. Again, only about a week removed from Avatar: The Way of Water, 21% drop here, continuing to see those low drops. Also, as you can see, Universal continuing to hold it in a lot of those screens, so kudos to them for being able to pull that off. Also, Universal also seeing a lot of success with Megan still, adding screens actually in the third week of its release, another $9.8 million. So this film, I do think, has a potential of maybe being able to eke out close to $100 million domestically by the end of its run, but we'll have to wait and see on that at this point in time. It's still obviously at the point where it's made profit, and we'll probably continue to add on to those profit margins as it continues to go forward. In the fourth place, we have the new film of the weekend, Missing, from Sony Pictures, which not seeing that great of a number, again, when you compare it to some of the others on this list, but because of a very small budget, this film actually is pretty much well on its way to breaking even, making some profit. It's one of the benefits of making these smaller films. This movie essentially uses, or at the very least has the perception of using, all cameras from computers, from phones. Very similar to the film Searching. It's by the same people, in fact. So they basically said, let's reuse that same concept. Again, not a very original concept, right? Let's reuse the concept, but let's also just change maybe the story around it. I kind of hope that this doesn't become a thing where it's like, hey, we're going to create another Ing in the future, and it's going to use the same exact story and the same exact formatting. Again, because even though I haven't seen the film, based on the trailer itself is making it clear that it's the same film as Searching, just with a different story. All right, same use of technology. And I'm going to call out stories and bad storytelling whenever I can actually, see it, and whenever I do see it. And when it comes to this one, it just is so very clearly a ripoff. And hey, you make it for a little bit of money, you make some money on top of it. Hey, I guess that's a win for them. In fifth place, we have A Man Called Otto, which once again had a wide release as of last weekend. I'll do the full box office breakdown on that film when the actual final numbers come out. Plane and House Party, both are seeing some drop-offs here. Plane is likely going to be a box office flop by the end of it because it cost a bit more. Whereas House Party have no numbers for that film, and so therefore cannot say whether the film is going to be a loss or not. But the movie is about 3 days or so away from going to HBO Max, and so whether or not it's going to make any money or not, the fact that it's going to end in the single digits, I think, hope it was worth whatever it is, whatever you were thinking, Warner Brothers, to put it out in theaters. So again, talking about Avatar: Way of Water, according to the numbers, there has been some discrepancies between the numbers and Box Office Mojo, so some numbers might be differing, but as the recording of this video, the numbers has the film well over $2 billion. And as I was mentioning previously, when you do compare this film to other movies, so for instance, the original Avatar, and I'm going to put that up against the original Avatar, and also, I'm going to put this up against Top Gun Maverick, and I'm going to make sure that is adjusted for inflation, because, again, that really is the only fair way to really be able to determine just, again, how well this film is doing historically. The film currently, right now, 2023 and 2023 numbers, especially over the last several years, is doing phenomenal. Again, this is the best performing movie, even as the people in the media have said, it's the best performing pandemic, they're still calling it the pandemic era. I'm right now firmly set in the post-pandemic era. But anyway, as you can see, the original Avatar film, when you adjust for inflation, $3.5 billion. So there's no way the film is going to be able to catch it as far as that's concerned. But looking at these dailies, this is where it's get very interesting. So you have Avatar 2, Avatar, and then Top Gun Maverick in each of these following categories. And as you can see, right, when it comes to the total domestic, at the same point of its release, the original Avatar was at $674 million. So again, there's just no way the new Avatar is going to catch that, but no one, I think, was really expecting it to do better than that film, and that film's ended up like 900 plus million or so in domestically, but when everything was said and done. And so you have 597 here, you have 564. So that's the reason why I was saying before, there's, again, it's obviously a clear edge to Avatar 2, but then when you look at these weekend numbers, right, the 7 versus 4, the 9 and 9 are the same, but the 8 versus 5, that, again, you start to see Top Gun Maverick winning out the weekends, clearly winning the dailies, which again was to be expected with the different times of the year that these films were released. And I do think that you're going to start to see, just like you see even later on with these other days, right, for original Avatar, I do think that you will see Top Gun Maverick continue to edge it out. And I wouldn't, again, be surprised to see those films maybe get close to evening. So that's why I'm thinking 650 to 700 for Avatar 2. And again, with the chance of it being higher, but again, interesting to see where that follows, and we'll follow that as the weeks go on. Puss in Boots at $284 million worldwide. Again, very impressive numbers there. Megan at $112.9 million, also impressive. Missing, $9.3 million, again, based on its budget. Pretty good numbers there. Man Called Otto at $43 million. Plane is only at $13 million, so this is the reason why it's not looking very good. I also did pull up the Box Office Mojo numbers because that is marking it as $20 million, and that is what I use for my actual charting. So going to the charting itself so we can wrap up this video, because everyone loves some charts, right? The budget for Missing was $7 million, so its break even is only about $17.5 million, and so with that being the case, then the film currently is only about 4.9 in the red, so there's a very good chance that this film will be at its break even point by the end of next weekend. Just would not be surprised there. House Party, we really can't say much about the movie because, again, the film doesn't have an actual reported budget, but the average for the projected end, since, again, this will be pulled from theaters pretty soon, is expected to be possibly single digits, if barely breaking $10 million. So not good at all. Planes at $21 million in the red. This was a film that we were also able to make some projections on. So $20 million after 2 weeks means that I'm projecting the film to make somewhere between $29 and $41 million. And with a break even of $56 million, that means likely going to lose somewhere between $16 and $8 million. And I've heard some people say that it's a fun movie, but again, it looks like just a generic Gerard Butler action film. So it's definitely not enticing people like me to go see it. But again, you might be one of those people that actually went to see the actual film itself. Megan is $49 million in net positive net gain territory. So again, continuing to do very well there. Whitney Houston's I Want to Dance with Somebody continues to be a flop. Babylon is, again, still a $100 million flop. It might actually be a little bit less when everything is said and done, but still $100 million in the red. Not a good look for them going forward. Puss in Boots is $43 million in the black. This is a film that is, again, a chart breaker. As you can see, 46% compared to its opening weekend. Even Babylon, technically, was actually a chart breaker too. Just it cost so much money, it was not able to actually, really cash in on that. Whereas you look at Avatar, also a chart breaker, is looking at $606 million in net gain profit as of right now. If you are taking, of course, the budget of $460 million, which has been given to us at face value, and not listening to whatever James Cameron is saying on any given day, right? Sometimes he says that or rather, he indicates, I want to make sure my language is clear, he indicates that the film either needed to make $1.5 to $2 billion to break even. Whatever it is that you believe, this is what I'm charting, and this film is a massive success, is going to have a lot more, again, box office return, be the biggest box office as far as net returns are concerned, really compared to any other film. Though also I do want to make sure to make clear that my charting does indeed take into account a 60-40 split between theaters and between the studios and the theaters respectively, whereas some other people might have more in-depth charts where people take into account the fact that really you only get about 25% of your return in places like China. That's right, 75% of that money goes to fund the CCP. And by the way, speaking of Disney, right, with Disney's Avatar giving over $150 million or so to the CCP to fund their human rights violations, guess what? We also now have word that Black Panther Wakanda Forever and also that Ant-Man Quantumania, guess what? Those films also have now gotten some release dates set for China as well. So the Bob Iger era is back. He is now in bed with China more than ever before. And so guess what? Yes, just like I've called out MCU films in the past and any other big budget films in the past for doing dealings with China and giving money to them, I continue to call that out here and call it as I see it. But anyway, those are the numbers as they stand. What are y'all's thoughts about it? How high do you think Avatar 2 is going to end up? Do you think the $2.5 billion mark is probably that sweet spot of where it's going to end? And also, what are y'all's thoughts about any of the films that have come out this weekend? Did you get to go see films like Missing or Plane or Puss in Boots or any of these other films that I've mentioned? Let me know in the comment section down below. Also, for those that have watched this long, I do really appreciate it. Please make sure to check out my channel, OMB Reviews, because I am still hosting the Wednesday Raven Awards. It's my Oscars boycott that I've done now for several years, and it's a lot of fun. And I'm still taking nominations for the best films of the year, worst films of the year, and other fun categories like that. And so if you want to check out the ballot for that, go ahead and check out my channel. It is in the community section, the community tab there, and you can vote for it. If you think Avatar is the best film of the year, guess what? Boom. Let your voice be heard, because that is closing tonight, again, Sunday evening around 8 p.m. And hopefully this video is out in time. This video is out after the fact. I have no control over when the video comes out, so if you were watching me on my own channel, I would have been mentioning it several times over. But if you do have still time to fill it out, I would say, hey, go check it out, because it's going to be a lot of fun. Right now I have about 85 responses or so, which is about standard for what it normally gets. And again, check out the categories and check out to see what the nominations are going to be on Tuesday when I announce them on Tuesday's stream, at least on my channel, before Friday night's main event, which you'd also, of course, check out here on this channel. Anyway, you guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. And as always, God bless.